West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Have you ever heard of a man named Gerald LK Smith? If you haven't, you are forgiven. He is no longer a famous figure, but in his day, he was a famous-ish guy, a preacher and political figure. At one point, he ran for Senate in Michigan as a Republican. In 1944, he ran for president against FDR. He ran on the ticket of the America First Party, which he had founded. Gerald LK Smith did not get far with that presidential bid or with the Michigan Senate bid as a Republican either. If Gerald LK Smith is remembered for anything today, it's probably mostly for this. This is a statue that he erected in Arkansas in the 1960s. It's called Christ of the Ozarks. Christ of the Ozarks was the subject of a suspiciously huge fundraising operation by Gerald LK Smith. He died in 1976, but that statue still stands in Arkansas today. But Gerald LK Smith is about to have another moment in the public eye, because what he really wanted to be remembered for, even more than that statue, was a nationwide movement that he tried to build. A movement that he named and that he led and that he promoted tirelessly and that he wanted to outlive him forever.
Motive behind the term Christian nationalist is easy to define and simple to interpret. We believe that the destiny of America in relationship to its governing authority must be kept in the hands of our own people. We must never be governed by aliens. We must keep control of our own money and our own blood. In other words, we must remain true to the Declaration of Independence. That is nationalism. We believe that the spiritual symbol of our statesmanship is the cross, which indeed is the symbol of Christianity. We believe that the inspiring dynamic out of which America grew is Christianity. We believe that there would be no real America such as we love and for which we're willing to die if there had been no Christianity. Thus, when a Christian is a nationalist, he becomes necessarily a Christian nationalist.
A Christian nationalist. That was Gerald LK Smith speaking in the 1950s as both a sort of pseudo-preacher and a political figure on the American right. He was the spokesman and the founder for this movement that he called Christian nationalism. And if that is ringing a bell for you at all, if it feels, despite the, annoying music bed with that speech and the guy's weird speaking style and all that, if that language that he was using feels like it rhymes a little bit with today's news, you are right about that.
Republicans really need to recognize the people they represent. Okay, their voters, not the lobbyist donors, not the corporate PACs, not those people. That's not who the Republican Party should represent. We need to be the party of nationalism, and I'm a Christian, and I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists.
We should be Christian nationalists. You are seeing that phrase and that sort of branding from the Trumpiest members of Congress. That's Georgia Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're also seeing it all over the place in headlines now about the way the Trumpiest part of the Republican Party is kind of branding itself these days. Christian nationalism on the rise in Republican campaigns. Christian nationalism is reshaping the Republican Party. The reason this Christian nationalism thing is an awkward fit, the reason it's maybe not going to be an easy path for today's Republican Party, or at least it shouldn't be an easy path for today's Republican Party to bring this back, is because they're not inventing this phrase for the first time. And we're not ignorant to history, and we know what it meant the last time, right? Christian nationalism is not a new concept. It's not a new American right-wing political concept. The reason this ought to be awkward for them to try to bring it back is because the last time as a country we tried that on with guys like Gerald LK Smith leading the way, they were really not shy in saying exactly what they meant by it. So I'm going to play you a little more Gerald LK Smith here. I apologize in advance for the annoying music bed coming back, but also specifically for the content of what you're about to hear him say.
Subversive forces exploiting sentimental nitwits are reading into the Constitution a code of conduct which threatens to mongrelize our race, destroy our racial self-respect, and enslave the white man. Fight mongrelization and all attempts being made to force the intermixture of the black and white races. Preserve America as a Christian nation, being conscious of the fact that there is a highly organized campaign to substitute Jewish tradition for Christian tradition. The most powerful Jewish organization in America is the Anti-Defamation League, which has launched a campaign to remove from all public schools any songbook which contains a Christmas carol or any other hymn which mentions the name of Jesus.
They're coming for the kids. They're coming for the public schools. They've infiltrated the public schools with their anti-Christian. Christian nationalism. Gerald LK Smith, the leader of the Christian nationalist movement, speaking in the 1950s. He was the leader of that movement in this country in the World War II era, around the time he was running for president. He was also a leader of that movement in the post-World War II era. And I have to tell you, what I just played you, that's kind of the mild stuff from him. The stuff about the Jews taking over the world and how Americans need to be Christian nationalists because only that can stop the worldwide Jewish conspiracy, not to mention all the race mixing. I mean, that sound I just played is the milder version of what Gerald LK Smith was famous for. He was a virulent, violent racist and anti-Semite, and that was the core of his movement, Christian nationalism, which you'd think would make Christian nationalism kind of a hard thing for today's Republicans to try to raise as their new banner. You think that would be a hard thing. They apparently do not have any qualms, particularly from the Trumpiest members of Congress and particularly from the Republican nominee for governor in the swing state of Pennsylvania, a man named Doug Mastriano. He's been kind of a case study for months now in Republicans actually trying to pull on their best Gerald LK Smith masks to make the Republican Party the Christian nationalist party he always wanted and that he spent all those sad decades trying to create. A paid consultant for the Doug Mastriano campaign. Again, Mastriano is the Republican nominee for governor in Pennsylvania. The Republican Party has chosen him as their candidate for governor. A paid consultant for Mastriano's campaign is making headlines today, thanks to the watchdog group Media Matters, starting to document this guy's own pronouncements on the threat of the Jews and on the Christian nationalist movement as represented by candidates like his guy, Republican Doug Mastriano.
So, no, we don't want people who are atheists. We don't want people who are Jewish. This is an explicitly Christian movement because this is an explicitly Christian country. Now, we're not saying that we're going to deport all these people or whatever, you're free to stay here, right? You're not going to be forced to convert or anything like this, but you're going to enjoy the fruits of living in a Christian society under Christian laws.
That is a consultant on the campaign for the Republican nominee for governor in Pennsylvania, Doug Mastriano, clarifying that it's not the plan to forcibly deport the Jews. Just to be clear, that's not the plan, for now. But Jews are not wanted. Jews are not part of the movement that this new Republican governor in Pennsylvania represents. So Jews, atheists, people of other faith, they won't be forcibly converted or deported. Now, that's not the plan for now. It's just that this is not for them, nor will this country be.
It is Tuesday, the 26th of July of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small, scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. Okay, so the tagline has been fulfilled, and I want to also remind folks that here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, roasted corn that has been soaked for a copious amount of time in a citrus water bath in its husks. That is then roasted in its husks and then cut off the cob, put in the chowder for, a culinary delight. Because that's how we do it here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. How are you doing? Okay, well, I'm doing pretty good considering the fact that we're having our rights stripped away from us as we speak. Systematically, I might add. I don't know. Are they in power? Has the coup been a success? I have been reminded that it's an ongoing coup, and I would say it's an insurgency because once the electeds get involved, that's when technically is an insurgency, and we have those working quite hard at the moment. In fact, they're even having their own infighting, just like back in the day. Yeah, I like the little tete-a-tete between Rand Paul and McConnell. Yeah, well, I don't know. Do we feel like the little voles that are in the root crevices of the giant sequoias, while the Stegosaurus and the, I guess it'd be a T-Rex. Always Stegosaurus against T-Rex. They're duking it out and stuff, and we're just like hoping, well, maybe they'll kill each other and we'll be okay. Well, I don't know. Is that what it's like? I don't know. Oh, another thing that is in my craw. What's up with these little kid Hill staffers going and protesting at Schumer and all the Democrats for not doing enough on climate change? Because they're doing something outside the box? Go to the Box Turtle McConnell's office and protest there. It's not the Democrats that are at blame here for inaction on climate change. Please. Why don't you go and protest at the lobby shops of the fossil fuel industry? Why don't you do that? Oh, because that's what everybody does. And look where it's gotten us, nowhere. So we're going to go and try to suppress the vote during the midterms. What kind of kids are you? I have an idea. All right. Some sort of, I'm just speculating here, but I bet they went to some, shall we say, Christian-oriented school. There's something very Christianist about this supposed protest in front of the Democrats on climate change. They're not doing enough. We have drastic times demand drastic measures. Well, yeah, go. If you're going to go and work outside the box, work outside the Box Turtle's office. That's where the ire should be. In fact, he even brought it up. Because that's the kind of politician he is. He actually said, well, if we're the ones to blame, why are they protesting at their door? Which made me realize another one of those coordinated efforts that we always get sucked into. So, I don't know. I suppose it appeals to the Germanic order part of my DNA, if one believes in that there's a systematic erosion of our rights rather than just some sort of chaotic one. Makes me feel better, you know? At least there's some coordination and order to it. Wow. And it is not hyperbole anymore. I'm not the only one who has been stating this. But the Republicans are Nazis. There's no getting around it. If their titular head has Mein Kampf on his bedstand, oh, who said that? That's not just some made-up story, as far as we know. It could be the made-up story of an irate wife, Ivana. But I got to say, when she relayed the story in her book, she wasn't saying it like it was a bad thing. Okay, I'm just saying. Oh, and Donnie reads a lot. He's got Mein Kampf next to his bedstand. She was relaying the story like it was a good thing. So please. And so they're Nazis. There's no getting around it. They're playing the Nazi playbook. They even got their brown shirts with the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. Maybe even the 3%ers, constitutional sheriffs. I don't know about them. Okay? They are a Nazi faction in and of themselves, and we'll see what happens when they try to survive the Night of the Long Knives. We got one of those going on. It's ongoing. It's many Nights of the Long Knives here in America, because that's how we do it. We got so much more to, shall we say, debride from the body politic. Scrape all of this stuff away. All right. Well, I guess since we have this, it's just natural to have our rights taken away from us. Do we have to accept it? I hope not. I have this rhetorical question of I don't get it. How do they get away with it? I mean, are they in power? No, the way they get away with it is the same way the Nazis got away with it back in Germany in the 20s and beyond. They played the game. They used rules against democracy. The rules that were set up so that you would have a representative democratic government of some sort were used against them. That's what Nazis do. That's why for decades and decades and decades the right wing has set up deep-pocketed think tanks and organizations to figure out the rules so they can work around them, and look where we are at this very moment. We don't have a Republican Party who nominates a jurist who then goes and judges by the letter of the law. No, they are there to twist the meaning of the law to suit the ends of the right-wing takeover of America, and that's what the Nazis did. Well, Nazi Germany, and now it's happening here. So, I suppose we would be more correct in calling it fascist, but Nazi, I like Nazi. It just rolls off the tongue better. They're essentially the same. I would say that the Nazis were a little bit more orderly and systematic in the way that they address things, whereas the fascists, sometimes were prone to, just outbursts. So, and we even have an issue that the Nazis had to address in their own day. Is sometimes even the guy who started the Nazis isn't Nazi enough. He's a little too crazy. He's a little too, shall we say, disorderly. And they had plotted and planned to replace him, to the point where generals actually tried to blow him up, except a giant thick desk wooden table saved his ass. And it wasn't so that the death camps would stop. It wasn't so that the roundup of the Jews would stop. It was that they could finally get the job done because they had a solution, and it was final, and this guy Hitler was in the way. So let's not make those German generals who tried to blow Hitler up into some sort of hero faction. They had a solution, and it was final, and they wanted to finally put it into, well, you know, the history books. Well, they did. Now, if we could just teach about it and not repeat the problem. All right. I guess I could go on and on. In fact, I probably would, but let's appeal to that Germanic part of whatever it is that's in my makeup. Inside, you know, there you go. My personality, and attend to the curated part of our show. Yes, let's. Okay, on the rest of the menu, well, of course, at the top, that was Rachel breaking down Christian nationalism and its origins with Gerald LK Smith. And I kind of remember this guy. There's another guy, Dan Smoot. I remember his radio show. He was kind of a fire breather, too, in the right-wing realm of things. Ugh. But anyway, Christian nationalism, America first. Might as well acknowledge the origins, because they always tell you who they are. Always. Believe it. On the rest of the menu, the Biden administration said the government will plant more than 1 billion trees across millions of acres of burned and dead woodlands in the United States West. The Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against some of the largest poultry producers in the U.S. over unfair worker practices, and Mississippi dropped the attorney they recruited to investigate welfare abuse after the former Republican governor was implicated in massive fraud. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the leadership of Scottish cricket is engulfed in a racism scandal, and a 72-year-old liberal Russian opposition politician was detained after returning to Moscow. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, who will be attending Netroots Nation in Pittsburgh this year, so stay tuned for that. If you would then, out there in radio listening land, look across the page to the left, you'll see our Patreon link. And if you could send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, if you could send those funds our way, oh boy, I got to tell you, it really helps us pay our bills. Do that once a month, and we're able to pool that with others who have sending us some coffee money. And we have found over 11 years now, more than 11 years, that when you pay your bills, you can pretty much fly under the radar and get away with a lot. And we have. And so we will continue, and we thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended, oh so many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. So you can follow me on Twitter and get to the Daily Co's page that I have there to check out the show notes and links, because that is where the real reportage is. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. And also the deep archive of the Netroots Radio Library for over 11 years can be found at the Internet Archive at archive.org. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Matthew Brown. The Biden administration yesterday, Monday, said the government will plant more than 1 billion trees across millions of acres of burned and dead woodlands in the U.S. West as officials struggle to counter the increasing toll on the nation's forests from wildfires and other manifestations of climate change. Destructive fires in recent years that burned too hot for forests to regrow naturally have far outpaced the government's capacity to plant new trees. That has created a backlog of 4.1 million acres in need of replanting, officials said. The U.S. Agriculture Department said it will have to quadruple the number of tree seedlings produced by nurseries to get through the backlog and meet future needs. That comes after Congress last year passed bipartisan legislation directing the Forest Service to plant 1.2 billion trees over the next decade, and after President Joe Biden in April ordered the agency to make the nation's forests more resilient as the globe gets hotter. Michael Balsamo of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The Justice Department filed a lawsuit yesterday, Monday, against some of the largest poultry producers in the U.S., along with a proposed settlement seeking to end what it claims have been long-standing deceptive and abusive practices for workers. The suit, filed in federal court in Maryland, names Cargill, Sanderson Farms, and Wayne Farms, along with a data consulting company known as Weber Mengsall and Company, and its president. In his lawsuit, the Justice Department alleges the companies have been engaged in a multi-year conspiracy to exchange information about the wages and benefits of workers at poultry processing plants to drive down employee competition in the marketplace. The companies did not immediately respond to messages seeking comment. The government contends the data consulting firm helped to share the information about the workers' compensation with the companies and their executives. By carrying out the scheme, officials allege the companies were able to compete less intensely for workers and reduce the amount of money and benefits they had to offer their employees, suppressing competition for poultry processing workers across the board, according to court papers. The defendants and unnamed co-conspirators in the lawsuit account for hiring about 90% of all chicken processing jobs in the nation. The suit is the latest example of the Justice Department's antitrust enforcement targeting companies the government believes engage in anti-competitive behavior to stifle workers or harm consumers. It also comes as the department continues a broader investigation into labor abuses in the poultry industry. Associated Press staff brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A former federal prosecutor investigating millions in misspent welfare dollars in Mississippi has been dropped from the case by the state agency that hired him. The State Department of Human Resources will find a new lawyer to replace Brad Pigott, a former U.S. attorney recruited roughly a year ago to help recoup $77 million in welfare funds identified by the state auditor. The decision to remove Pigott as lead attorney in the civil case was first reported by Mississippi Today, a nonprofit digital news operation that has reported extensively on the welfare scandal. Pigott said he was fired about a week after he filed a subpoena for records from the University of Southern Mississippi Athletic Foundation. Pigott was seeking records related to $5 million in welfare money the University Foundation received to build a volleyball stadium, and included communications between the foundation and former Mississippi Governor, Republican Phil Bryant. All I did, and I believe all that caused me to be terminated from representing the department or having anything to do with the litigation, was try to get the truth about all of that, Pigott told Mississippi Today. Shad White, Mississippi State Auditor, has said the welfare fraud his office uncovered amounts to the state's largest public corruption case in 2 decades. He criticized the decision to drop Pigott. Firing Pigott is a mistake, White posted Saturday on Twitter. He added, Pigott worked well with my office, communicating regularly with us about the status of the case and how we should share information. Robert Anderson, executive director of the Department of Human Services, said in a statement that Pigott's contract expires at the end of July and won't be renewed. In a statement, Anderson said Pigott had filed an extensive subpoena seeking records from the Athletic Foundation without any prior discussion with Human Services officials. Now attorneys represent clients, and MDHS is the client in this case, Anderson said. I hope I don't need to explain that an attorney needs to remain in close communication with his client at all times. Now, Mississippi Today reported that Pigott sent a draft copy of the subpoena via email to both the Attorney General's office and the Welfare Agency's General Counsel before he filed it. Earlier this month, U.S. Representative Benny Thompson, a Mississippi Democrat, asked the Justice Department to investigate Bryant in connection with the welfare fraud case. The congressman's request came after a defendant in the case said in a court document that she steered $1.1 million in welfare money to former NFL star Brett Favre at the direction of Bryant. The former governor, a Republican, has denied the accusations. The allegation was made by Nancy New, who pleaded guilty in April along with her son Zachary New to charges of misusing public money. The mother and son, who ran a nonprofit group and an education company in Mississippi, have agreed to testify against others. Well. Okay, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Fiona Samuels. The life of a polar bear is hard. It's made even harder as temperatures climb. The bears of the north largely depend on sea ice to survive, hunting seals that take a breath through gaps in the ice. For most bears, their feeding opportunities disappear as sheets of ice melt. Now, researchers have identified a new subpopulation of polar bears that may be able to survive longer thanks to their ability to use glacial ice as a sea ice alternative.
Well, I've been working on polar bears for about 15 years, and this particular study was just really a wholly unexpected finding that came out of a much larger survey of polar bears along the east coast of Greenland.
That's Kristen Lydra, a marine biologist at the University of Washington in Seattle, who was part of the team of scientists who spent years tracking polar bears in Greenland. They recently published their surprising findings in a paper in Science.
We lay out the evidence for a previously undocumented and highly isolated subpopulation of polar bears living on the southeast coast of Greenland. We knew you could find polar bears in that area, but we just didn't think there were that many because it's not really a place you'd expect a lot of bears or bears to be able to persist for very long.
Basically, the area wasn't expected to be particularly bear-friendly because it goes long periods of time without sea ice. Generally, polar bears will starve if there are more than 100 sea ice-free days during the year because they primarily rely on sea ice to hunt for seals and other prey. But these bears can supplement the sea ice-free days with glacial ice.
We realized that this glacial ice was essentially supporting an isolated population. So it wasn't just they were using it, opportunistically. It was that the only way these bears would live in this isolated place and be isolated for hundreds of years with such a short sea ice season is to take advantage of this glacial ice and really rely on it for survival.
This adaptation may help these polar bears hang on longer than their distant neighbors who rely on sea ice.
It's a hopeful story in the sense we found this new group of bears. We didn't know about them. They add this genetic diversity. It has to also be presented in the context of the whole Arctic and what we see we're headed for. And, the fact that all polar bears don't have this option and most don't.
As climate change brings us closer to an ice-free Arctic, this group of polar bears may help scientists understand how the species might persist. Those that persist might look a lot like this subpopulation, living in similar environmental pockets.
If we can monitor these bears for the next 10, 20, 30 years, we're going to learn a lot about how they do in an Arctic that continues to warm.
But in the end, saving polar bears really comes down to one thing.
If we care about polar bears, global climate action is the most important thing that we can do.
For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Fiona Samuels.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwan is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with 3 things. 1, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have a limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-Hee. I've been talking today with Seung-Hee Lee Kwan about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Come to the forest. It's a place not so far away. A place where you don't have to mow the lawn or babysit. A place where you don't have to make time for free time. Where you can cool down in one of nature's swimming pools. Come meet bugs and birds. You may even meet the mysterious creature known as the other you. The silly you. The adventurous you. The curious you. Ask your parents to take you to this not-so-far-away place. Come to the forest, where the other you lives. But first, stop by discovertheforest.org, a public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Wouldn't it be great if life came with a remote control? You know, you could hit pause when you needed to, or hit rewind, like that time you knocked down that wasp's nest. Uh-oh. Or that time you forgot to roll up your windows in the car wash.
Fantastic.
Yeah, a remote control would have come in handy then. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Life doesn't come with a remote control. Yikes! So you're on your own with the wasps. You have the power to take control of prediabetes. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Last July, several GOP senators combined their 5-watt intellects to charge that inflation was rising because of, quote, insane tax and spending spree of President Biden and the Democrats. Never mind that the insane spending is for such sensible, productive, and enormously popular national needs as child care and jobless benefits. Mitch McConnell's rabidly partisan flock saw the chance to politicize the public's legitimate worries about rising prices. You poor consumers are made to pay more for basics, they squawked, because of Socialist Joe's investment in grassroots people. Follow the ricocheting pinball of the GOP's logic. 1, they say that helping hard-hit families induces them to refuse to go to work. 2, this creates blockages in the global supply chain. 3, this causes shortages of everything. 4, this forces corporate bosses to raise all prices, which 5, slams the middle class and poor, so 6, lazy workers cause inflation. Whoa, Rube Goldberg couldn't have dreamed up a more fantastical diagram to deflect attention from what's really happening, namely that instead of an inflation problem, we have a corporate greed problem. Of course, the greedmeisters insist that their pursuit of excess corporate profits has not driven any price surges. In our economy of free market competition, they snap, prices are established by the law of supply and demand. It's the magic of the marketplace, they explain. But magicians don't do magic, they perform illusions. And the illusion of free market competition implodes when it hits the reality that our economy doesn't remotely resemble a competitive marketplace. This is Jim Hightower saying, for some 40 years, corporate-directed government policies have been transforming America into a monopoly nation, letting the few gouge the many. That's where inflation comes from. Howdy-ho, folks. Thanks for tuning in and sharing my weekly commentaries. Also, please join me for a live web show I host every other Tuesday, the Hightower Lowdown Happy Hour at the Chat and Chew Cafe. You can join the action live online as I chat with grassroots leaders and progressive sparklies from around the country. Go to hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew to find out about upcoming guests and watch past episodes. That's hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1775. That was the day the United States Post Office was created in Philadelphia under Benjamin Franklin. Franklin was a member of the Second Continental Congress. Among many other distinctions, Ben Franklin was named the nation's first Postmaster General. Franklin received a salary of $1,000, with an additional $340 for a secretary and comptroller. His responsibilities spanned all post offices from Massachusetts to Georgia, and he had the authority to hire additional postmasters measures as necessary. Previously, in 1753, Benjamin Franklin helped lead the postal service in the colonies. He made numerous improvements in the mail system, including setting up new, more efficient routes. He had also been able to cut delivery time in half between Philadelphia and New York by having weekly mail wagons travel both day and night via relay teams. In 1774, the British fired Franklin from his postmaster job because of his revolutionary activities. There have been postal unions dating back to the 19th century. Those early unions had essentially no bargaining rights. They existed largely as lobbying organizations that otherwise would have no say about their working conditions. Wage increases depended on the whim of Congress. On March 18, 1970, thousands of New York City postal workers walked off the job in protest. They were joined in the streets by 200,000 others in 30 major cities. Mail service ground to a halt, and the plight of postal workers was brought to the public's attention. The strike was soon settled, with Congress approving a 6% wage increase. The strike served as an impetus for the enactment of the Postal Reorganization Act of 1970, which granted unions the right to negotiate with management over their wages, benefits, and working conditions.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 70 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting about the similar temp as we had yesterday. We registered 109 here at the mothership in Rogue River, expecting temperatures around that. And we will have sunshine with a few afternoon clouds. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. A few clouds overnight with lows near 70, not nearly low enough. Darn it. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy skies tomorrow with near record high temperatures. Highs above 106. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. I should mention that on Thursday and Friday we are projected to have temperatures over 110. Oh my. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County and the southern part of Oregon have not been updated. They will only be updated once a week, so we will give those updates later on in the week. Grass pollen is rated moderate right outside the window here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good, though it's almost in the moderate range. It now is at 48 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is very high at level 9, so do take care. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.89 inches, visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 65%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 72 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 74 and partly cloudy. Rome is 92 and fair. Kyiv is 80 degrees and fair. Kabul is 75 and fair. Hong Kong is 85 and fair. Tokyo is 82 degrees and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 50 and clear. San Francisco, California is 57 and cloudy with a air quality advisory because of dense smoke from the Oak Fire coming down from Yosemite. And New York, New York is a pleasant 80 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is Weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Associated Press staff bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The leadership of Scottish cricket was found to be institutionally racist by an independent review, dealing another major blow to the sport after a similar scandal in the English game. The review was published yesterday, Monday, following a 7-month investigation sparked by allegations from Scotland's all-time leading wicket-taker, Majid Haq, and his former teammate, Kasem Sheikh. It found that governing body Cricket Scotland failed in 29 out of 31 indicators of institutional racism set out by a consultancy firm leading the investigation. The body only partially passed the other 2 tests, and there were 448 examples of institutional racism. Hundreds of people came forward to recount their experiences as part of the investigation. From those conversations, 68 individual concerns have been referred for further investigation, including 31 allegations of racism against 15 people, 2 clubs, and 1 regional association. The allegations include racial abuse, the use of inappropriate language, favoritism toward white children from public schools, and a lack of a transparent selection process. An interim report in April revealed that some incidents have been referred to police. 1 individual has appeared in court as a result. The review is recommending that Cricket Scotland be placed in special measures by Sports Scotland, the government agency overseeing sports in the country. Stuart Harris, chief executive of Sports Scotland, described the findings of the report as deeply concerning and in some cases shocking, and said it should act as a wake-up call for all of Scottish sport. Racism is a societal problem, he said, and it is no longer good enough to be simply non-racist. Scottish sport must now be actively anti-racist.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Associated Press staff bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Russian authorities yesterday, Monday, briefly detained a 72-year-old liberal politician who recently returned to Moscow from abroad, the latest move in a relentless crackdown on dissent amid Moscow's military action in Ukraine. Leonid Gozman was detained after the Russian Interior Ministry issued a warrant for his arrest while investigating a criminal case against him. Gozman had been accused of breaching the law that requires Russian citizens to notify authorities about a foreign citizenship or a residency permit. If found guilty, Gozman could be sentenced to a fine or community work. He had notified the authorities about his Israeli citizenship, but they claimed that he failed to do so within the proper time. Gozman, a vocal critic of the Kremlin's campaign in Ukraine, left Russia when it started but returned in June in what he described as a moral choice. The Russian Justice Ministry has listed him as a foreign agent, a description that carries a strong pejorative meaning and implies additional government scrutiny. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.